In the winter of 1821, in a small village called Anchy, tucked into the mountains of eastern France, a child was born who would one day become synonymous with luxury itself. But there was nothing luxurious about his beginning. Louis Vuitton came into a world of wood and stone, of rough hands and empty pockets. His father was a carpenter, his mother a hat-maker, and together they worked from dawn until dark just to keep their children from hunger. They lived in a simple house with a dirt floor, and young Louis learned early that survival required more than hope. When he was 10, his mother died. His father, already worn thin by poverty, retreated into himself, unable to give his children the warmth they needed. Louis felt the loss like a hole in his chest, but he also felt something else, a restlessness, a pull toward something beyond the mountains that surrounded him. He watched the wealthy travelers pass through his village, their carriages piled with trunks made of fine wood and leather, and he wondered where they were going. He wondered what it would feel like to be one of them. At 13, he made a decision that would define his life. He had nothing to keep him in Anchy. His father had remarried, and his stepmother was unkind. So one morning, before the sun rose, he slipped out of the house with a small bundle of belongings and began to walk. His destination was Paris, nearly 300 miles away. He had no money, no food, no map. He had only the certainty that anywhere was better than where he'd been. The journey took 2 years. 2 years of walking through forests and along muddy roads, of sleeping in barns and under bridges, of knocking on kitchen doors asking for bread. He worked where he could, helping farmers with harvests, sweeping chimneys, carrying loads for travelers. He learned to survive on almost nothing, to read the kindness in strangers' eyes, to keep walking when his feet bled and his stomach cramped. The boy who left Anchy was 13 and soft. The young man who arrived in Paris was 15 and made of something harder. But Paris was not kind to the poor. The city glittered from a distance, but up close it was cold and indifferent. Louis wandered its streets, searching for work, sleeping in doorways, eating scraps from market stalls. He was just another country boy lost in the capital, invisible to the wealthy who strolled past him without a glance. He began to wonder if he'd made a terrible mistake. One evening, exhausted and hungry, he saw a man struggling to carry a heavy trunk down a narrow street. Without thinking, Louis stepped forward and offered to help. He carried the trunk to a workshop, set it down carefully, and turned to leave. But the workshop owner, a man named Monsieur Marichal, stopped him. He'd seen the way Louis handled the trunk, the care in his movements, the strength in his thin arms. He asked if Louis wanted work. That moment changed everything. Louis became an apprentice in Marichal's workshop, learning the craft of box making and trunk making. He started with the smallest tasks, sweeping floors and organizing tools, but he watched everything. At night, after the others had gone home, he stayed behind to practice. He taught his hands to be precise, his eyes to measure without a ruler, his mind to understand how wood and leather could work together. Marichal noticed. He began to teach Louis seriously, passing on skills that had taken him decades to master. By the time he was 20, Louis had become one of the finest craftsmen in Paris. Nobles and wealthy merchants requested him by name. They trusted him with their belongings, knew that a trunk made by Louis Vuitton would protect its contents through any journey. But Louis wanted more. He wanted to create, not just build. He wanted to solve problems that no one else had solved. The problem he saw was simple. Trunks of his time had rounded tops to let water run off, which meant they couldn't be stacked. Travelers piled them haphazardly, wasting space and risking damage. Louis imagined something different. A flat-topped trunk. Lightweight. Waterproof. Stackable. It seemed obvious to him, but no one had done it. His chance came in 1853, when he was appointed as the personal trunk maker to Empress Eugenie, wife of Napoleon III. She was one of the most powerful women in the world, and she demanded perfection. Louis built for her, listened to her needs, earned her trust. And when he showed her his flat-topped trunk, she didn't hesitate. She loved it. She told her friends. Soon, all of Paris wanted a Louis Vuitton trunk. In 1854, He opened his own shop. The demand grew so quickly that he had to expand, moving to larger workshops, hiring and training new craftsmen. He built a reputation on quality, on innovation, on the understanding that his customers weren't just buying a trunk, they were buying certainty. Certainty that their belongings would arrive safely. Certainty that they carried something made with care. But success never follows a straight line. The Franco-Prussian War came in 1870, and Louis's workshop was ransacked. His materials stolen. His business destroyed. At nearly 50 years old, he had to start again. He rebuilt piece by piece, and when peace returned, his customers returned with him. They hadn't forgotten the quality of his work. They hadn't found anyone else who matched his standards. Louis worked until he couldn't work anymore. In 1892, at the age of 70, he died, leaving the business to his son, Georges. But Georges inherited more than a company. He inherited a philosophy that luxury isn't about price, but about care. That a thing done well is its own reward. That a name can mean something if it's earned. Georges faced his own challenges. Counterfeiters began copying Louis's designs, a problem that would haunt the brand for generations. His response was brilliant. He created the LV monogram, not just as a logo, but as a signature that couldn't be easily forged. He expanded beyond trunks, into handbags and smaller leather goods. He opened stores in London, New York, Buenos Aires. The name Louis Vuitton began to circle the globe. The generations that followed each added their own chapter. Gaston Louis, Louis's grandson, navigated the Great Depression and 2 world wars, keeping the brand alive through decades of uncertainty. He introduced new designs, new materials, new ways of thinking about luxury. He understood that a brand must evolve or die. In the 1970s, Henri Racamar, who married into the family, took the reins and transformed Louis Vuitton into a modern powerhouse. He expanded into Asia, raised prices to increase exclusivity, and created the luxury shopping experience that customers now expect. In 1987, he merged Louis Vuitton with Moët Chandon and Hennessy, creating LVMH, the largest luxury group in the world. Today, Louis Vuitton is worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Its stores stretch from Paris to Tokyo to New York. Its monogram is recognized everywhere, by everyone. But behind all of it, behind the glamour and the celebrity endorsements, there is still that boy from Anchi. The one who walked for 2 years with nothing but hope. The one who carried a stranger's trunk and found his future in the weight of it. Louis Vuitton never became wealthy for its own sake. He became wealthy because he understood something simple, that quality matters. That care shows. That if you build something truly well, people will notice. He proved that where you start doesn't determine where you end. He proved that a poor boy from the mountains could build an empire, not through luck or inheritance, but through patience, skill, and the refusal to settle for anything less than his best. And that is why, more than 200 years after his birth, his name still means something. Not because of the monogram. Not because of the price tags. But because behind every Louis Vuitton product, there is still the echo of a boy who believed that a better life was possible and who walked nearly 300 miles to find it.